Instead, you could just lick your hand and then run it back through your hair, like your mommy used to do.
Looks good. Looks good. No worries.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone.
Okay, we are properly judged for our television appearance here this evening. So I'm going to go ahead and say, hold on, let me get ready. Let me prep. Hello, dearies. Welcome to Undersampled Radio, episode 65. Matt, how's things?
Hi. Things are great.
Yeah. Did you just come here from a party or what?
Oh, yeah. Oh, did I ever? Yeah. Well, you know, it's so I have 3 kids, right? My eldest is 13. So tonight was her, what do you call it? Christmas concert, I guess. So
that is what
there's a really, yeah, there's an excellent band program at her school. And the band teacher is really something else. She's so energetic and patient and awesome. So yeah, and they sounded great. Like there's grade level bands, and then there's kind of a jazz band ensemble, and the jazz band are really good.
Awesome.
You know, yeah, I was really impressed. So anyway, it was a lot of fun. And
how long has she been playing?
So she started clarinet. She's been playing the piano for a long time, but she started clarinet like I guess when she started junior high, right? I get my high schools muddled up, but so 2 years, and then she started flute this year. So yeah,
cool,
lots of fun. And then I dashed down here. I was going to cycle down, but actually I had time to go get the car, so I got the car. So I made it in time.
Well, I've got some news. I've got some news for you, Canadian. Guess what happened in Austin, Texas today? You will never guess what happened in Austin. If you guess within 3 guesses, if you guess what happened in Austin, Texas today, I will send you the Christmas gift of your liking.
Oh, wow. It snowed.
Oh, God. That's it. You got it. What would you like for Christmas, Matt?
I saw
I'll have another bottle of it.
I saw a list of very expensive Geo Geeks gifts. You know, you wrote, right, Matt?
I did, yeah.
That was really cool.
Choose something off my
right.
Yeah, choose something off my Christmas list. It's on the internet. What do you think it's for? Paula, you must be on a yoga ball or something.
Yes, I am actually.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool. I need one for this broadcasting station.
That's
a very professional broadcasting station I have. So we're doing news, right? So I have some news. I have some really important news, and it's related to a conversation we had with some of our listeners last week. We tend to, because we do YouTube live broadcast while we're recording this podcast, Matt and I are very good at putting visual things up for our radio listeners to see. So if you don't watch this show on YouTube, you probably should this week, because I am about to drop a gem here. I moved to Texas, as you guys know.
Wait. Before you do that,
okay.
You've gone all fuzzy.
Oh, shit,
and I want the full effect.
Oh man. Yeah. We're not supposed to curse on this show, Paula. And I just broke our only rule. Is that sharp enough? Is that sharp?
That's good.
Okay.
That's
all right. So,
better.
As you know, I've recently moved to Texas, and I went with my wife shopping the other day in the hipster part of town, and we stopped at the cowboy store, the Boots store, and they had these bad boys. So
that's a pretty sweet hat.
Tune in this week on Undersampled Radio to see Graham wearing a cowboy hat.
That actually sounds a very expensive hat.
No, it wasn't very expensive.
It's
but
not.
It feels like $1 million. So I've been wearing it all over town, and most of the people who are Texas natives are like, "We don't wear that." And I'm like, yeehaw! Anyway, that's really all the news. I mean, I have some news about like graph machine learning, but we can talk about that later or not at all if you guys want.
Yeah.
So I'm going to introduce our guest. And you don't sound all that enthused, Matt.
Well, Paula's there. She's
Yeah.
She clearly wants to chat. I think we should just do it.
I'm very chatty.
I think we should do it.
Yes.
Yeah,
I think we should introduce our guest. Yeah. Okay. Here we go. We have Paula Alves on the show with us today. She owns her own company, data science company.
Yes.
And so I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say a company of one person. Yeah.
Company of one person. Well, we've all done that at one point or another.
Mm-hmm.
So Paula, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. That sounds really cool. I mean, as I mentioned, the two most interesting, the two things that I like the most, geology and data machine learning. So I'm in the right podcast here.
You are.
This podcast is basically, we've just been waiting for you, basically.
That's right. I'm in danger of losing my job as co-host. I better step it up. Those cowboy hats. Paula, so did you start in geology?
Yes, I did. Actually, my very first job was very much, a lot of people graduate in geology, they end up not working in geology. Eventually, down the line, I ended up not working in geology. But my very first job was actually very much geology. I was actually working as a mine geologist for a phosphate mine. I'm originally from Brazil, so I was working in Brazil, and back then it was very good because cheese operation had they used some pretty good technology, which is not always the case with mining companies. So I was working a lot with deposit modeling, which was like my dream job. I wanted to do deposit modeling. So we did a lot of drilling. It was a carbonatite deposit, so it was not sedimentary. It was hard rock, and it's very unique also deposit because you don't have a lot of carbonatites in the world because they are they come from the mantle, so they do not become exposed in outcrop easily, and they are very interesting rocks too. It's like 100 mostly carbonates and the mantle. So there are a lot of things issue around carbonatites that people don't fully understand yet. How can we have so much CO2 at those conditions? But it's very interesting. Like for example, carbonatites, that was a phosphate deposit. There's another huge one in Russia. But also, carbonatites are the ones that actually host the biggest rare earth elements deposits, like the one in China.
Like what? Palladium?
So, no, it's actually the rare earths, like all the, including yttrium, but also I think praseodymium, neodymium, all these things that are used in the clean technologies. And also, eventually, interestingly enough, later I ended up working with scandium, which is another very weird, unique mineral, element, but the geologists will say. But anyways, I started with with just mine geology, and funny enough, it's interesting to think how a lot of the work I was doing back then relates a lot with data science today.
How so?
Well, we had a lot of different data that we collected. So of course we're doing a lot of drilling, and so both exploration drilling and production drilling. So you had the data from the analysis from the drill cores. I got to know that the mine, the deposit, it was an open pit mine. I got to know as well as my hand because I did mapping of all the exposed benches. I did the geological mapping and also structural mapping. So we actually added that data into the data set, the database. Of course, we had a survey crew which is also not that usual to see necessarily, unless like you have some really big operations in mining. So we had our own survey crew, so we had the terrain data. We also did a lot of testing other than just chemical analysis, physical tests on the material. So we had the data, and then we had a bunch of historical data, previous maps, previous mining reports. So all that was integrated into a data set, and then from that we actually would use that to create a block model, what we call block model. Basically, it's a representation in blocks, in three-dimensional blocks.
It's like Minecraft.
Of the mineral. Yes. Yeah.
We've talked about that several times on the show.
Okay, cool. And actually, basically the main information that you get from that is, the resource estimate, right? How much, in that case, was phosphate. There were other parameters as well, but the main thing was about the phosphate grade.
How big is the grid? How big are the blocks?
So I remember, on the vertical, I think there were 5 by 5 by 5 meters, okay, because our benches were actually 5 meters high. We had like 10 turn into 5 meters. Sorry, the opposite, 5 and 10 sometimes would turn into 10. But we mine 5 meters bench height. And so the vertical was more as a convenience that can make sense for the mining equipment and stuff like that. But then the other dimensions were more or less determined by convenience and also just statistical. And then analysis. And then, so we created a block model. And then once you have the resource estimate, you have to create a mining plan from that. And the cool thing is that, we actually would have this plan, and then of course we go mine, and then we actually go and update the model, and we run the estimates and everything. It was all computerized. So back then we were using, this mining software suite. You would have to know what you're doing, of course, and enter the parameters, production parameters and things like that. But also it was not necessarily, as I mentioned, talking to someone else. Open source back in the day, that time, it was not a big deal yet. So, people, there was no such a thing as software as a service or open source, So we would use the software suite. But we did have, for the mining plan itself, we actually had a consultant that he actually wrote a software. Basically, it was an implementation of a famous mining algorithm to run the mining, create the mining plans. And actually, that one didn't have a graphic interface, so we did everything in the command line and stuff. But it was very interesting work. So basically, you collect your data, and then you create a model, and then you update a model. A little bit different, context, but quite similar in some sense to data science.
It sounds like you loved it. How did you wind up in data science?
I did love it. I really did. But when I was working there at the mine, I met. Actually, there was a conference, a big geological conference, and there was one of the few trips over there to the mine site. And I was at the time I was the only geologist who could speak English, and so I ended up leading the field trip, and also my professors were there. Also, they were part of the field trip and organizing. So I met this gentleman who turned out to become my advisor. He actually was, he goes out. He's a super cool guy. He goes out all over the world whenever he travels, recruiting graduate students. Mm-hmm. But he was looking mostly for PhDs, and I said, well, I don't have a PhD, but and then he was like, no, but we also have master's degree, opportunities. I said, okay, I'll keep an eye on it. and it was cool because we kept in touch, and I had already been considering grad school, although not seriously because I had a job.
Sure,
so,
yeah.
but that sounded like a crazy idea, but it sounded very interesting. It was like a small, university, but school, but it was a mining school. So that sounded like a good fit, and then I applied, and then I got a scholarship, and then I came here. And then after I completed the master's degree, I actually got an opportunity. It was a mining and minerals, mining and chemicals company. They actually, I was working for this company here in the US, but they're truly a multinational company. They have, operations everywhere in the world. I mean, everywhere. And they have some really big operations in Brazil too. Mm-hmm. So in the Amazon, and also other parts of Brazil and other parts, but mostly one of the biggest operations in the Amazon. And so I ended up getting a job with this company, and I started as a minerals research geologist, but pretty soon kind of started getting more into process engineering, more in terms of the opportunities that, projects and the things that are more relevant going on. And so I ended up spending quite a few, I spent quite a bit of time working with this company. I had different roles there. And then one of my last roles, I was actually working for a project with this company in Belgium, and then it was she's off the blue, she's a recruiter from a company here in Silicon Valley that was they were looking for someone, the weirdest thing, someone with the mineral processing and geology skills, and that was for a fuel cell manufacturing company, and which a lot of people wonder what do you someone with a mining background would do. But that was what was interesting too. So basically it was a completely change of environment, and I was looking for something like that. After a while, I had a lot of fun working for mining. I really did, but it can be really hard on your personal life, and you end up a lot of hours, very harsh work environment. So I remember this conversation we were having with the project I was working on. I think that we got some temperature in Belgium in the winter. There was -20 centigrade, and it's not very common. I think it was just like for a couple of weeks, but it was awful. So I remember when finally the temperature went up to 0, which is 32 Fahrenheit, and then
balmy 0.
Yeah, and then we're having to call, and these guys are like, "Wow, is it better?" Yeah, much better now. Oh no, here it's still 0 in the UK. Oh no, it's 0 here. It's just it's just that it's much better now. But it was fun. I do miss a lot of aspects of that line of work, but I'm also glad I'm not doing that anymore. So I moved here.
So what do you do?
This company, and they were looking for. So they have this fuel cell product, and it's a very good product. It's basically you can generate your own energy from natural gas. And it's a very clean, you generate on site. It's a very clean, very efficient process. There's no transmission lines and there's no combustion. So there's the technology of the electrolyte use a dopant. That's where the scandium comes into the story. Is a scandium as a dopant in the structure of the electrolyte. And this actually gives quite a few, advantages or some certain qualities, especially on the longevity of the fuel cells and cells, the electrolyte.
How do you dope scandium onto a material?
It's actually a ceramic process, and actually the way we use the scandium, we're making a very super pure, high purity powder. Mm-hmm. So basically scandium oxide, and basically you create cheese. It's really a ceramic plate, and basically you have it's really cool because the entire manufacturing is right here. Yeah. So in the process, that's really cool about mineral technology, because you're thinking about in a way, geology itself is mineral science, is material science. So a lot of the process that we think, in geological terms, actually kind of reproduce in the industry, manufacturing. So our group, the problem is like scandium does not have a supply developed in the world. And then all of a sudden the company needs scandium. And turns out the Russians hold on to a lot of scandium. But scandium has some very limited applications, or has had some very limited applications. And also geologically speaking, you don't have like a huge deposits, like huge concentrations of scandium. So it's always a subproduct of something. Mm-hmm. It's a byproduct. So basically, the company put together a group of people with mining background because they need to source the scandium. And to begin with, they didn't even know where scandium. They had some idea, of course, but they still need to figure out, okay, where can we find scandium even, Sure. And then on top of that, you have to develop the process to obtain the high purity powder that I mentioned. So that's how I was working there. Actually, funny enough, I ended up doing a little bit of geology research, which was really cool. Yeah.
So
and
tell us about your current company. What are you doing?
So actually, I have been actually decided to change career, and I took a kind of a leap of faith because I kind of learned everything like a kind of very structured way, and then when I felt like, okay, you know what, I think I'm gonna give it a try, and test the market, and it was time to leave my job. So I left my job, and I started to my idea was to work on some projects and then have something to talk about and show like people and see what kind of work would come my way. So I did that, and then I got a job opportunity, a work opportunity with one of the big companies here in Silicon Valley, and I ended up working on a project with them for a year. And then after that, I have not worked on really big projects like that, but I have worked on other smaller projects.
What was the big project?
It was actually for Cisco, and it was there were a few things that they wanted to. It was more like related to business problems, like in this case, operations. Mm-hmm. So they have audio data, from. That was the data set I was working the most.
Transactional data or something?
Yeah, it's actually basically like a CDR, call detailed records. Mm-hmm. So you have all these records of phone calls, in this case were conference calls. And, there are interesting things like, product usage, trends in the product usage, a lot of things in terms of optimization of their internal processes. Also, some revenue auditing. They're trying to understand some changes in their revenue, and so it was definitely very business focused.
Awesome.
Yeah, it was really cool. I learned a lot of things really fast.
Were you doing modeling to like project revenues or?
Well, that's the interesting thing about it. Of course, when I joined the project, I was very eager to work with some modeling because they want to. One of the things that they needed was forecasting. They wanted to better forecast the product demand. But there were so many things still to get there. So I ended up working a lot with product data integration. Data cleaning, a lot of data analysis, a lot of putting together information for people that they needed for some other project. The one thing is that once you're part of the group, and then people realize you're there, and then you start to get all these kind of requests, that you grow into the role, and then you start, so yeah, I mean, I didn't do as much modeling as I would like to, but in the end of the day, just can be really. In my case, I have seen. I'm sure, of course, it's different for different companies, and some companies are more advanced in terms of data science, and in the sense of sometimes they have a product that is actually very heavily focused on data science,
right.
or they have like large teams. But depending on the company or the group you're working with, sometimes there are a lot of more like low-hanging fruits that and then of course
for a big company like Cisco, I mean, if you improve anything by 0.5%, you're talking about tens of millions of dollars.
And that's the real key about it. Like there were some things that actually ended up leading like some really small patches in like internally on the product architecture, and I kind of very grossly kind of estimated how much the impact could be, but I didn't get into very accurate numbers, but yeah, it's definitely in the order of millions.
It's always impressive to see those types of figures. I was doing I don't want to say analysis, but I was reading and kind of picking around a little bit today about investment in the oil and gas space. And, there's BP invested like $25 million in that company, that machine learning company. Right. And I'm like, man, that's a lot of money, And then I'm thinking about it, I'm like, that's like less than 1/100% of their market.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, it's amazing, and it's interesting because I have worked by far mostly with large companies, and yes, I mean that's why they can afford hiring people just looking to how can we prove things here and there.
So it sounds like you've been picking around on some smaller projects since the big one finished. What kind of stuff are you working on?
So I actually did some data analysis for another pharmaceutical company. I also one thing that I wanted to mention. So I decided a few months back that I wanted to get more into geospatial stuff.
Cool.
So I haven't got any work on geospatial yet, but I have been working on some things on my end. I got into it was really cool. I got into a program with NASA to work on their with open data.
And that was really bots, right?
Yes.
That's cool. So what are you working on for them?
So but the way the program works, it's almost like a little bit of a free form. So they introduce you to a lot of stuff. So I think the number one thing is like I got to understand a little bit better how the NASA works a little bit internally. So because basically if there's one thing they don't really necessarily have, and they're trying to achieve that, and to some extent they have got there. It's like a centralized place for the data, right? And also it can be very overwhelming because you're talking about, it can be geology, it can be astronomy, it can be environmental science, it can be like, a lot of different things. And they work with several different universities and research institutions. So say if I'm going to work with Cheese University, they're going to work at some university, and then their university is also going to, be granted to host the data. So you have disparate sources. So the program, one thing that a big part of it was for me to understand that better, learn where to find the data. Also, they, have a gamut of projects that, they want people to be involved in. Or trying to get people involved, like because NASA pretty much has made all their data open, so they want people to be, more people doing things with it, right? I have not necessarily picked any of the projects that it would be really cool to actually work with something that someone at NASA is working, because they had those opportunities as well. But I hadn't picked anything like that because I had some more specific interests. I wanted to actually focus on satellite data and
images.
Yeah, exactly. Images. Also, I've been poking around a little bit more recently with radar data, which is completely different. Interesting. I hadn't never actually worked anything like radar. But so I decided to start from building again some base. I have a bunch of friends here who actually are into geospatial, so we decided to get together and start like working more towards working with Python for this geospatial. So we kind of created this study group. So it's not just, it's open for everybody. And we are going to go through, we're just getting started actually. Just like a few days ago, I posted the study plan.
Cool.
Yeah, so we're going to go through geospatial Python, and then I want to put together something about remote sensing for everyone, remote sensing 101 for everyone, because it's kind of a little bit hard to find that level of information. Whenever you look at remote sensing information online, there's always a lot of sometimes too much math and too much. And the goal, so NASA has this Space Apps Challenge that they organize every year, and is people work on it remotely, and it goes on for for a few months, like 2, 3, 4 months, I think.
And then they have local events as well, right?
Yes, it's all over, and it's really cool the way they have been able to reach. And you see people from like some small town, I don't know, in maybe like in Africa or Eastern Europe, with teens and working on really cool stuff. So, I think it's really cool. So, but what you see a lot is that, if people could have a little bit of the basic domain, they would be able to probably do even cooler stuff,
Of course.
because otherwise people look at the data, they, cannot make too much sense of it. So they come up with something still interesting, but it's more like usually some visualization of the data or something like that. I think it would be interesting to actually do, I don't know, basic things even, like, I don't know, you can determine how many swimming pools you can find in the image,
Sure.
And then calculate maybe how much water goes into swimming pools. I don't know, things like that. Yeah. So
are you going to get together in a local event and have some friends come over and hack away for a few days?
Yeah. So as of the way we're doing this now, and I'm kind of still working better the format, we are using Slack channel. But so far everybody I have invited is local, but
What's the name of the Slack channel?
Oh, it's GeoPython.
GeoPython. Cool. Is there a hyphen in the middle or just one word?
No, just one word.
Okay. We have some listeners in the Bay Area.
And nice.
I believe that some of those listeners did Space Apps last year. Is that right, Matt?
Awesome.
Anyway, so
the only person I remember is Justin.
Okay. He was live on site.
Nice.
I thought there was someone in San Francisco. Anyway, so if you're in the Bay Area, check out the Slack channel.
Yeah, GeoPython.
Cool. So I see on your various websites, you have an awesome blog that you're involved in a lot of events like this, sort of hacking for a greater good.
Yes.
Why spend the time?
Well, I think there are a lot of reasons. Like, first of all, it's really cool to do something that you're helping, organizations that, that do cool, really cool, interesting work to help other people. And also, it's always a good way. Usually, it is, data for good kind of hackathons. At least the couple of ones I have, different groups that participated. They have a really good vibe. It's just like, so it's a good way to meet people and make friends. Actually, I made a lot of friends through the data kind. And then, of course, there's a learning aspect. You learn how to work with, in a group environment with other people doing data science at the same time, deadlines and things like that, and actually meeting the expectations of the organization, getting information, all that stuff. So just I think indeed the biggest advantage in the end is like you put a little bit of work and then they are so grateful,
because there's a pervasive record of tools or data or something that can help others?
Yeah, it's more like, frankly, a lot of these nonprofits, so they have most of the time, sometimes they do have bigger data, but most of the times it's just small data, and oftentimes it's not very organized data, so you need to do a lot of cleaning and restructuring of the data. But then in the end of the day, for the things that matter the most, it doesn't take much. It's almost like low-hanging. There are a lot of low-hanging fruits. You can do just some data analysis, some nice visualization, and then they're able to see things in the data that they could not be able to see. They're not able to see before. So I have worked like the two projects that I work with. One was helping homeless people, and it's really a two persons, two guys, nonprofit. And the other one is a much bigger organization that helps. They provide a lot of really good services for like low-income people.
So what'd you do on this project?
So just very first project was interesting, and that's very interesting about the part of the learning part as well. So this first one, this first project, when I joined it, I was still fairly new, working with machine learning and stuff like that. Right. And it was everything fresh in my mind. So I got there, I was like super excited. I'm going to do machine learning, And then I started to see, well, there's a lot of data cleaning to do. There's a lot of issues, and you don't have right now the data that you need exactly for what you thought. And frankly, maybe this is not even necessarily that important for them. I mean, you can just work on something else that actually, is going to meet their expectation. So that was pretty cool. A lot of people who actually come to the data-thons, they call data-thon. It's actually, they are, very eager, like I was. Let's do some data science. And of course, you can pick the team you're going to work with. But at the end of the day, the visualizations that you end up putting together from the data is what really gets people, to feel more, the nonprofits and stuff, to get more, to see more value for the way they see.
Do you feel like you provided something that was useful for the future, like a stepping stone for another project? Or?
Oh yes, they were able to see like some gaps. They had like just several different tables with several different services that they provide. So they were able to have a different picture of the service that they provide, and then in terms of things like, for example, certain features that were more important. Things that they need to focus on, because they were trying to, keep up with meeting the expectations of their own clients. And also, of course, that's very important at the same time for them to keep bringing funding to the organization. So they were able to target a little bit more and see which programs are working better than others. There was one, I remember one lady, she mentioned like, it just was really interesting because we didn't realize that we were actually at that level, just X program, and now we're going to be able to actually change our strategy a little bit, and so yeah.
Good.
So
awesome. So is most of the data science work you do is in Python or R or what?
It's in Python. Actually, I did do quite a few things in R. I do like R a lot too. But I think it's easier to work with Python in the sense of when you're going to, if you're going to create like a full product, like you're going to implement something, like for example, create some some product that's going to show you want to create a web page, or you can do pretty much all these things with R too. I just feel like when you get outside of the machine learning and the data visualization part, it's a little bit trickier to do the coding programming in R.
Sure. Do you do integration, or are you just purely algorithms person?
No. With the R, I was mostly working with the existing libraries that they had. So just the algorithms, and sometimes I there were very few occasions. I actually was working with both Python and R. So if you work in the Jupyter notebook, it's not that hard to actually switch between one and another.
Right.
But frankly, it's hard to keep up with also the two things, because there are new things coming up all the time. You kind of have to pick one.
So when you deliver your service, is there any product aspect to it? I mean, do you like write Python code or something to deliver fast, scalable code?
Well, so everything I have worked with is not necessarily it has been more like an analysis, ad hoc analysis. So I haven't had to put anything, say, create like production code. So most of the times I use notebooks, because you can actually, and it depends, of course, on the audience, because sometimes, it's not, even notebook is not ideal. You just actually want to create some slide presentation, or, or sometimes they have their own business analytics tools that they use, and they want to see you, using through that. So it's mostly when people are actually interested in the code. Again, it depends on, someone else might be able to work on that too. And then I usually go with Jupyter Notebook, because everything is right there, basically, registered step by step.
Visual. That's nice. So have you worked with lower level languages?
No, but I have been recently started.
Yeah, which one was that?
C++. Yeah. And
how do you like it?
Well, it's interesting. In a way, it's a different way of thinking. Coming from Python, right? It's basically, in a way, it's kind of very similar, but a lot of these things that you don't need to think about with Python, because it all happens under the hood.
Automatically.
Exactly. Automatically is a very good word. It's a good word, and it's kind of a dangerous word too, because sometimes you have these bugs in Python, you have no idea where they come from, and so that's a little bit harder to happen in something like with C++. However, it can be kind of a pain to code with C++.
No such thing as a null pointer in Python.
Yes, exactly. But it's interesting that there are a few things that they start to introduce in Python, kind of I guess trying to get like not trying to do so. You already have, like, for example, things like type hints. That seems like they're becoming like bigger and bigger, so it's kind of bringing a few elements to that if you want a level of control, but not quite, because it's interpreted anyways. And but it's interesting. I think it's good to have an extra set of skills. I don't intend to become a C++ ninja,
Sure.
But it's useful, again, if you're going to. And also, you mentioned, I think you just mentioned, things start to make a little bit more sense. Like, for example, sometimes I want to understand like how something works in NumPy, and then I have a couple of times then I went to the look at the code, and then of course everything is in C or sometimes C++, but it's like, well, it can make more sense if I actually know that. So, and you can do things like a little bit more on that.
Before we get to reading lists, which I'm very excited about today, I wanted to touch on the non-diversity of data scientists. It seems to me, and I'm not an expert on the subject, but it seems to me like data science, out of all the tech professions, is one of the least diverse of them all. The statistic I read was, this is from Forbes this year, is that there's only 26% female data scientists. Why is that, do you think?
Yeah, that's actually quite interesting, because I mean, coming from mining, it doesn't really necessarily feel like the least diverse, but it's definitely not very diverse. And it's kind of interesting to think kind of in hindsight too, because when I started to develop an interest for data science, I actually met a lot of women it felt like there were a lot more women getting into it. Yeah. And of course, you know, I hang out with a lot of other female data scientists as well. But again, there are some indicators, like, for example, if you go look at like Kaggle, for example, you don't see a lot of women there, right? Sure. There are definitely women there, but not as nearly as many. Maybe because it caters, maybe, you know, for people who tend to be more competitive. Not necessarily that women are competitive, but it can be a little bit more, you know, set you back a little bit more. So I feel like, you know, I think in the end of the day, the root cause of not having enough women representation, it's more to a basic level that I think to some degree or another, we are all, you know, we all can relate, or we're all guilty. You know, it comes from early. It comes from like when you're a child, and then, you know, you choose to give the boys, you know, certain toys, and for the girls certain toys, and you start to build a stereotype since we are little, and then we kind of perpetuate that, you know, with our own kids. And then the result of that ends up being, I feel, you know, people start to see like if you're a woman working something in technology, you are almost seen like as an anomaly. And I had so many occasions in my career when people came to me and said, you know, we got along very well, and I felt like they admired my work and everything, but they would come and say, Paula, after they had this level of a friendship, and let me ask you this: why did you choose this career? You know?
What are you doing down in this dirty mine?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like, are you crazy or what? You know, it's just like, because, you know, people don't see. It's just the image that we make. You know that. And again, I feel like all of us, to some extent, more or less, we are guilty of that. I was just thinking about, I have 2 nieces, and one occasion I was buying some gifts for one of my nieces, and I went to the store, and I picked up some clothes and everything. I knew she needed some clothes. So when I went before I was going to the cashiers, I looked at what I had bought, and I saw all this pink stuff. I said, well, yeah, okay, you know, most of the girls' stuff are pink. But then I realized, oh my gosh, she hates pink. I mean, why am I doing this?
Yeah.
She hates pink, you know? It's just
That's
like
the perpetuation.
Exactly.
Right there, right?
Exactly.
So is the answer that we teach girls to code?
I think so, but a little bit beyond that, also to make sure it is not an intimidating environment, like it's a friendly. Like, for example, I can give another example. We'll talk about the Data for Good hackathons, and I have had, you know, very good experience with those. But I have been to other hackathons as well. Mm-hmm. There was just one hackathon I'm not going to mention, but you know, it was like we're going to work with weather data, and then we get there. And first of all, I was the only woman, but that's okay. You know, it's not the first time. But then it's just like this group of just dudes talking, you know, dude-esque, you know.
Yeah.
And I just didn't feel like a fitting. And basically, I think it's a little bit on the organizers to kind of make sure that people are going to feel included, you know. So
how do you think that they would do that?
I think you need to you know, establish some structure, like have some structure. Like, for example, we want to, first of all, make sure that, remember that this is a, you know, I don't care about cursing, but you know, you don't want to have people making stupid comments or making stupid questions. Things that are not appropriate, right? Make it very clear that that's not going to be accepted. Also, whenever there is a money prize, you know, these hackathons tend to be a little bit more, you know, I don't know, women tend to, I don't care about the money stuff. I'm there for, the money would be great, but I'm there more for the community. Women focus a lot on community stuff. And when I think about myself, I enjoy that aspect. And so, you know, I think you have to have to set of rules clear, and then also reach out to people. Reach out, because if you just let people self-organize, when it comes to tech, you're just going to have men showing up.
Sure, boys club.
So,
do you think it would help to have a female organizer?
Oh yes, yes. Not always, but but I'm saying like it's not something that is guaranteed to help. But I think it's a step there, because you know, a lot of the events that I go to, we have more women representation. They are usually organized by women.
Right. So some of the hackathons that I attend have mentors of some sort or another that are kind of walking around helping give people direction. So maybe if we have a more representative, a more diverse group of mentors, we would see more female participation in hackathons. Do you think that's true?
Yeah, I think so.
I don't know how you highlight that ahead of time.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's good to, when you're like marketing the hackathon, make sure that you reach out to, you know, women-specific groups. That by itself is going to send a message like, we want women to be here. So there's this other hackathon I participated. It was actually a mining hackathon, mining technology hackathon.
Cool.
Yeah, and so it was okay. I mean, mostly guys, anyways. But then I said, you know what? I'm going to come up, because usually each hackathon has a different dynamics. So sometimes, you know, people go there to have their own teams, or sometimes they're allowed to work on something they have already been working before. Sometimes it doesn't even matter how much you code, it's more about the idea. So it really depends. So it's kind of hard to figure out the first time you're participating. So I decided, you know what, I've been through enough hackathons now. I think I'm sure it is a mining hackathon. It's going to be mostly guys.
Sure.
So I'm going to create a group ahead. And I went on and recruited my friends. So we were the only group of women. There was one very brave guy who joined our group. So yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. What did you work on?
So they had actually two companies there, BHP and Caterpillar. And they had like a different, basically they wanted to first kind of develop applications that would help the problems that they posed. The one for BHP was actually super interesting. It was about optimization of their logistics of their train, they have like just very large, what do you say, the transportation of the ore from the mines, because the iron mines in Australia are far in the outback, far back. It's not, and so they have this huge logistics systems to actually transport all the ore to the coast to ship overseas. And so they're looking to optimization of their the trains themselves, the parts are related to the railroad transportation. And again, it was super interesting because just a little bit that you improve there is a huge opportunity. Like they have a lot of. And then the other one was Caterpillar. The one that we worked with was with Caterpillar. Mm-hmm. It was more of a strategic decision because their data set was smaller, so it was going to be easier to work with.
Right.
And they were looking for optimization of the. Also, it was optimization, but more related to the operation of their equipment. So we had a lot of data from the trucks and from the machine part. The let's say the technical aspects of the operation of a truck. Mm-hmm. Mining truck. So they wanted to do some, they were interested in all sort of things, whatever we would come up with. But they wanted like a, interest like in something like doing some predictions and everything. But in the end of the day, what was actually, what they were looking for more ideas than necessarily coding, and we were like, fixated on trying to come up with this application that would have all this prediction, safety. We were working like with safety, how to improve safety and how you can actually predict some I don't even remember in detail what we were working with, but it was related to safety, and we focused too much on coming up with some predictions, and in the end of the day, we were not able to finish, and just a weekend.
That's a hackathon for sure.
Exactly. Yeah.
All right. Well, before we run out of time, I want to get to reading lists because I'm very excited about my book. But Paula, let's start with you. What are you reading?
I actually just finished rereading Animal Farm.
The classic.
Yes, I think it's very much like people have been talking more lately about the book. I originally read the book in Portuguese, so I decided, I'm gonna go and read the English. It is a very small book, so I finished pretty quick. And then I'm reading. It's a little bit lame, but or not, but it's technical. Lame in the sense that it's really technical. It's not really. So I'm reading The Algorithm is Illuminated, which is a book that came up a few months back, and a friend recommended me.
Cool.
Yeah.
What kind of algorithms is it? It's tuned to a specific field, or?
No, actually, basically, just one. Actually, there will be 4 parts. So this is the very first part of the book. So it focuses on sorting algorithms. Things like big O notation. So these are the basic ones. Divide and conquer. So.
Cool. That sounds like it would be right up your alley, Matt.
Yeah, it does sound cool. Has it got any pictures in it?
Well, actually, it's cool because I like it's written very much as prose. Of course, there is math, but it's not super math heavy. So there is coding and prose and some math. So, and yeah, I'm enjoying. There is a full course online on Stanford Lagunitas and also Coursera. And of course, you can complement.
Is it Python code in there?
So the
pseudocode.
Actually, it is pseudocode, exactly. So you can usually use any language to code with it. Yeah.
I'm looking. I'm going to look inside on Amazon. It's
okay.
Oh right, yeah. That looks really cool.
Mm-hmm.
How about you, Matt? Are you still working on one of your mathy books?
No, I'm actually not. I'm not reading anything at the moment. I'm sorry to say.
Oh. Well, that I like to hear that because I'm going to speak about my book now. Which
okay, good.
Okay, so my favorite author of all time is Joan Didion, and she published a book this year about her trip. It's written off of her memoirs of her trip down to the southeast of the United States. So when I was a young impressionable writer, I worked with a writing mentor. This is creative writing. This is non-technical writing. I worked with a writing mentor, and one of the most influential things on my writing at the time was a memoir by Joan Didion about her time spent in New York. And at the time in my life, I lived in New Orleans for like 2 or 3 years, and I was in a new place, and it was strange, and I wished that the memoir Joan Didion wrote was about New Orleans. And it turns out, voila, that now she's published basically an extended memoir. It's only 100-something pages of her time in the Southeast United States. So I haven't started yet. I'm absolutely psyched. Favorite author, perfect subject. It's going to be amazing.
Awesome.
Oh, by the way, the book is called South and West. Did I say that already?
South and West. Okay. Yeah, actually, I live in Georgia and North Carolina for quite some time.
I like living in the South. The people are very, very friendly compared to my East Coast bratty upbringing. But that's all the time we've got time for. That's all the time we have time for. What am I even talking about? I have to say before we sign off, Matt. Wait, hold on. Let's do outros, and then I'll do this as my sign-off question for Matt. It's an easy one for you today. So first of all, Paula, thanks for joining us on the show today. That was awesome chat.
Of course. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Paula. It's nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
All right, Matt. Here we go. How did you see it in the news? How did you know it was snowing in Austin today?
Well, you sort of led me into it with your Canada remark, and when Americans talk about Canada, they're usually
it's either snow or hockey. Huh?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, or saying sorry a lot. One of those three things.
Seriously,
I thought it was unlikely that people in Austin had suddenly started saying sorry a lot. So,
that's it, huh? Well, so Paula, Matt is like atypically good at puzzle solving and riddles, and so I guess I shouldn't be surprised that he got that.
Got it right.
Anyway, see you listeners next week.
Mind palace and
see you next week when Matt shows up with a double-sided hat on. Wait, before we sign off, I have to put my cowboy hat back on. Thanks again, Paula. See you guys.
Thank you, guys. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Good night.
Bye.
We're still broadcasting. I apologize.